Great, now we're going to be doing finding square roots and cube roots of algebraic expressions. Now remember, the key here is we're going to have some unknowns, normally x and y. Now, the thing you'll find with finding square roots and cube roots, you're going to find it's very similar to the way we used to do it. We're going to use the same method. What was 4 squared? That was 16, right? What was the square root of 9? That was 3. You knew this, you know this stuff. What is x squared? That is simply x squared. So we could have made here, instead of 4, we could have had it as x. It's exactly the same. What is the square root of x squared? So that is like saying, what is the square root of 4 squared? And that is simply square root of 16, which is simply 4. And that is obviously the same as x. The cube root of 27 is equal to 3. The cube root of x cubed the same way is simply equal to x, right? Because 27, of course, is the same if that's 3 as as 3 cubed, and that is equal to 3. Okay, what about 4x squared? That's simply equal to 4x squared, a bit of a silly one. What if we said 4x squared, or 4x all squared? That is 4 squared times x squared, which is the same as 16x squared. What about y squared times the root of 9? That is simply the same as y squared times 3. Right? Better yet, we could write this, because now 3 is a coefficient, so it's good to put it before as 3y squared. What about the square root of y squared and 9? Well, now we've got to square root both of these, and that's going to be y3. Again, better yet, that is 3y. It's just better practice. What about the cube root of 27y cubed? That is simply going to be 3y. We cube root that and that, still multiplied together. And we've already changed it from 3y, and that's a better way to show it. What about the quad root, if you will, or the fourth root of y to the 4? And that is equal to simply y. This is just to show you, you don't need to worry about that. Examples. 4 squared times x cubed all to the power of 2. How do we work this out? What happens, you've got to remember your power rules here. So this is going to be 2 times 2. When we power, what do we do to those? We go 4, 2 times 2 times 3, x, let me just erase that, times x 3 times 2, right? Don't forget your power rules. So this is now 4 to the power of 4. Now 4 to the power of 4 is going to be a big number. So we can leave this either as 4 to the power of 4, or you can work it out if you want. Do you remember how to work out something like 4 to the power of 4? I'm just going to put it into my calculator to work it out, and it is equal to 256. And that's going to equal 6. So this is 256 times x 6. Just for your own practice, 4 squared, as you saw, was the same as 16 all to the power of 2. So you could have simply worked out 16 squared, right? And 16 squared, you could have done long multiplication like this, and then you wouldn't have needed a calculator. Okay, let's look at another example. We have the cube root, or the square root of 9y cubed. That is simply the square root of 9, so we could do it like 9 multiplied by y squared. And that is simply equal to 3 times y. Okay, what about the square root of y4, right? So this is the same as y squared. Why? Because y squared times to the power of 2 is simply the same as y, 2 multiplied by 2, which is equal to y4. Okay, and then the cube root of 8 cubed divided by y6. The cube root of 8 cubed is simply going to be 8. We can write it like this if we want, times the cube root of y6, right, and that is going to equal 8, and then this is going to equal y squared. Remember that y squared to the power of 3 is equal to y 2 times 3, which is equal to y6, which is what we started with. Let's look at some more examples. 4 squared x cubed all to the power of 2 times y cubed x all to the power of 2. So this is now 4 squared to the power of 2. So we're going to multiply that out. We're going to say that's 16 squared times x. 3 times 2 is 6. This is all times by y, 3 to 2. That's 3 times 2 is 6. And then x, that's a 1 times a 2 is x2. Right? So now, what happens when we times these together, not to the power anymore? What was 16 squared? We know that was 256 from previous example. x6 plus x squared is x to the 8, and then y to the 6. That easy. Ooh, how are we going to do this? y2 squared, all to the power of 4, times the square root of 9, y3. Let's write this a bit easier. This is y2 multiplied by 4, or times the square root of 9, or times the square root of y squared. That is going to equal y to the 8 plus 3, times 3 times y. And that is equal to y to the 1. So that is going to be 3y, 8 plus 1. And that is 3y to the 9. Oh, this is a big example for us to end off with. 2 squared times 2, all to the power of 2, times x to the power of 2, times the cube root of 8 cubed, x squared cubed, y 6. How are we going to do this? Okay, 2 squared we know is 4. That is, all being squared is times all to the power of 2, times x to the power of 2. Let's all multiply this with the cube roots multiplied by the cube root of y 6. So 4 squared is 16 times x squared. 8 cubed, the cubes cancel out, we can leave that, times 8, times x cubed, ooh, those cancel out, the cubes again, so that's x squared. That's to the 6, so that's going to leave y squared. What is 8 times 6? 16 times 8. 16 times 8, we can use long multiplication. 8 times 6 is 48. We put our 4. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 4 is 12. So we've got 12, 128. So that is equal to 128 times x to the 4 times y squared. And that is our answer. And then we have finding square roots and cube roots.